So, I'm not a regular Reddit user. I recently found r/slash on YouTube and heard many stories of revenge, pro-revenge, etc. I'm a very forgiving person, often taken advantage of, but I let it slide. I have one exception: don't mess with my kids. Quick backstory. My oldest is on the autism spectrum. When we first moved here, 6 years ago, he saw two girls playing next door with some rocks. He knew he wasn't allowed to leave the yard, so he ran around our property, finding the prettiest rocks he could, and threw them at the girls, who ran crying to their mom. I spoke to their mom, who seemed cool, and we resolved the issue peacefully. I thought. Shortly after we moved here, I noticed the neighbor's dog would get out and roam the neighborhood. She was very skittish, so I could never catch her. We live on a busy road, so I was worried, and occasionally called animal control to see if they could help her before she got hit. One day, my neighbor's other dog was in our yard. When the kids and I stepped out of the house to go to the car, it snarled and growled. I called the police. It was a Sunday. Animal control was closed, and they took care of it. The next day, neighbor storms over to me, screaming at me for costing her a lot of money. She blamed me, my husband, her landlord, for not fixing her fence, and insisted she had very powerful friends who would crush me if I didn't leave her alone. She screamed over her loss of thousands of dollars, claiming I cost her daughter her senior pictures. "You should be more forgiving," she said, "since I should have reported your retarded kid. Don't mess with my kids." Another quick note: it turns out she would let the dogs out when they were in heat, and only let them back when they were pregnant. They would sell the puppies and repeat. Animal control did what they could, but they couldn't do much. Since watching r/, I became quite aware of malicious compliance. I read our city's codes and ordinances until I knew them front to back, and I reported her for everything. Cans on the street at 6:01 p.m., and they're required to be in by 6:00 p.m. Reported. I can hear you from my property. Reported. Grass too high. Reported. I have a massive spreadsheet of times, dates, and violations. Meanwhile, she still let her dogs out. They dug up the neighborhood, pooped everywhere, and got into our trash. Since the one dog was vicious, I couldn't let my kids go outside without me. We felt like prisoners in our own home. The dogs would be outside in all kinds of weather. Ice storms, 100+ degree heat, no water, no food, no shelter. Animal control and I became best friends. They desperately wanted the dogs removed. It reached a point where they drove by her house on the way to and from work. They rescued dozens of puppies, sometimes finding them wandering the road. Where I live, there is a limit to how many times you can report someone within a time frame. And if I walked in to report, and they knew I couldn't, they would give a shake of their head, and I would instead announce I wanted to look at adopting an animal. I've taken in a fabulous sweetie of a cat and a poor abused doggo, but that's not important to the story. My neighbor was furious. Any day I reported them, I would wake up the next day to find something on my property wrong. Car broken into, faucet in the backyard turned on high, the gas in my grill left on, all kinds of stuff. I've tried everything, even getting PTA involved, before I knew they were likely to put the dogs down. Eventually, the vicious dog was hit by a car. They immediately got a new dog. I reported them for not licensing it. When I spoke to other neighbors, I let them know what was going on and encouraged them to report them as well. I'm very active in my community, and I've gotten to first-name basis with many, like the mayor, police chief, etc. There was a sort of academy to get to know your city, and I took it. So I met a lot of people and have been volunteering, so they view me in a good light. Well, it's been a couple years, and my work is finally paying off. I got a call from a lawyer representing the county. She was bringing everything to the court and wanted me to testify. When she found out I had a spreadsheet, pictures, and videos of everything, she nearly squealed with delight. My neighbor is currently being charged with reckless endangerment, being a public nuisance, animal cruelty, child endangerment, disturbing the peace, and I can't remember what else. The lawyer informed me that they were requesting the following: they not be allowed to own any animals, ever. The current animals be removed at once. Due to the large number of complaints from the neighborhood, and due to the varying types of complaints, they are to be deemed a public nuisance and be removed from the county, never allowed to return. Damages be paid to the neighborhood, since we all lost many a flower garden to the dogs, plus all the time we had to spend cleaning the trash and poop up. Jail time. Now I confess, I didn't know it was possible to be banned from a city, never mind an entire county. It wasn't my intent. I just wanted those dogs rescued. They didn't deserve to be treated like that. Bonus. A few nights ago, I was legit concerned when I heard screaming and crashing from their house. I called the police. Evidently, they got the news about going to court and why, and it started an argument between husband and wife that evolved into a screaming/throwing things event, shattering their front window in the process. They only arrested the husband, who screamed the entire time that he was going to divorce her, and she would take the fall for the puppy mill by herself. I haven't seen him since, but a lawyer showed up at my door on accident looking for her. I looked her name up. She's a divorce lawyer. TLDR. Call my kid a retard while you abuse animals. I'll have you removed from the city and ruin your marriage. Update. Wow. I did not expect this response. A lot of people have made the same comments, so I'll fix a couple things. First, I'm going through chemo right now, so my brain is wonky, and I typed something confusing to a lot of people. I started reporting her years ago more seriously after her comment about my son, but it wasn't until r/ that I found there were so many ways to do it, and there can be heavy penalties for it. I had originally only intended to report for a little while, but after seeing her dog during an ice storm, huddled in the cold, I knew I couldn't stop. I had to do something, anything, to help those dogs, so I did the only thing I knew how. I kept reporting, escalating the variety when I learned I could. Secondly, I don't have an issue with r/ making money off of my story. I look at it as when a singer does a cover song. He's giving his interpretation of it. It's also great for a couple friends I have who are dyslexic. r/ is a YouTuber who reads Reddit stories out loud. I appreciate being in the video, but no, I didn't lie just to get on there. I get nothing out of this. I don't have a YouTube channel, and I'd only posted to Reddit twice. I just hope this story helps someone help animals. Third, no, I didn't fully go nuclear just because she used retard. Lots of people use it. I'm a gamer. I hear it a lot. It was the way she said it, meant to hurt him. And if you've ever looked a kid in the eyes when he asks what that word means, you'll know the pain it brought us. The crying, his wondering why he's different and not like other kids, and if others would always hate him just because he's different. My neighbor's kids walking by the house, throwing that word and others at us. He went into therapy and has been much better. It still hurts when someone calls him that, but he can handle it now. He's also turned into a freaking awesome person, but that's another story. Fourth, I can update after court, but I'm told I won't know the results. I can probably guess if she never has dogs again, or puts the house up for sale, or if she comes screaming at me again. Fifth, I can't upload any pictures because I don't know how. XD, her dogs were a pit mix, something black and fluffy, the one that got hit, and a dog that looks like the Target mascot. My dog is, we're guessing, a Belgian Malinois. We have to guess. He was rescued by police. We think he was used as a bait dog for dogfights. He had no concept of a car ride with the window down, a bone, or even a ball. Crud, I'm tearing up again. He was malnourished and had heartworms. We've had him for a few months, and he's much better now. He loves snuggles, doesn't flinch when we reach for him, and he will chase a ball, even if he just stands next to it when he finds it. We named him Drax, the destroyer of cats. My cat was rescued from the side of the road as a kitten, too young to be away from her mother, but no one found her mother, and no one came to claim her. She is my best friend. She greets me every time I come home and is always snuggling near me. When I'm sick from the chemo, she leans against me and purrs. Her name is Molly Quinn McGonagall, only spelled correctly. She seems to be a type of calico. When I first brought Drax home, he tried to get her, either to eat her or play with her, thus his name. Sixth, there is one way on my property, the driveway. I'm surrounded by trees. I could not get past the snarling dog to try to get my neighbor's attention, and I didn't have her phone number. I could not keep a gun in the house with an autistic child who is somehow a master at all things electronic or locked. We've been through a lot, stuff that isn't relevant to the story, but we moved here to get a fresh start. I've worked hard to ensure my kids look at their home as a safe haven, a place where they can always come when stressed. It shouldn't be a source of stress. I did not install a security system because when we moved here, it was to start over. We were broke, literally nothing in the bank. We moved here with some clothes and a car. We've been rebuilding and have a really nice life, but money is still tight, so I couldn't afford the security system. Seventh, we never saw or heard any signs of physical abuse, but judging from the way the first dog was scared and the vicious one was, well, vicious, I suspected. During one report, animal control couldn't catch the vicious one because it was, well, vicious. I need a new word, danged chemo brain. They told me to just try to avoid it, as they couldn't come to collect it if I called, as it was a danger to them as well. I didn't make any false reports that they were abusing them. I felt that would be counterproductive. If they weren't, it would have been a lie, and it could have gotten all of my other reports thrown out. Eighth, yes, someone suggested I poison our trash, so the dogs would eat it if they got into it. I couldn't do it. It's not the dog's fault. It seemed a cruel thing to do. On the one hand, it would have put them out of their misery, but I don't feel like I should make that call. Also, when the vicious one was hit by a car, they immediately replaced her. I assume if I had poisoned them, she would just have gotten new ones. It would not have done anything. Ninth, no, I don't feel I went overboard. If I were reported even once, I would fix the issue. They refused to be good neighbors, and they repeatedly neglected those dogs. Other than leaving water out and not chasing them off my property if they were drinking from the sprinkler, I didn't know what else I could do. People with autism tend to be sensitive, especially to animals. I have 2 on the spectrum, and they had to see these dogs mistreated for 6 years. They had to hear the car's tires screaming as the driver slammed the brakes, trying not to hit the dog. Until she was hit, they couldn't play outside without me. Additionally, my husband has cerebral palsy, so he couldn't, and shouldn't, try to handle the trash and slash or poop their dogs made. I had to handle it, and going through chemo opens you up to a lot of dangerous things. I also should not have handled the trash or poop. I did try to ask her to come clean up after her dogs, but she laughed at me and said I couldn't prove it was her dogs. She still doesn't know all the evidence I have against her. No lie, I'm looking forward to showing up at court with my other neighbors. Remember, I'm not the only one who reported, and seeing the look on her face. Lastly, the husband came to get his stuff yesterday. They didn't say a word to each other. He loaded his boxes into his car and just drove off. He always seemed nice, other than the dog thing. I wonder if she did it when he was at work or something. The 2 dogs were taken away pending court, so a big win right there. Animal control says one dog is terrified and snarls at everyone, inhaling her food the moment they put it in bowl. All common in abused animals. The other dog started off crying a lot, but when she realized she wasn't being hurt, she has started warming up. She's a real sweetheart. She's not allowed to be put up for adoption yet, but she's being used in our library's Read to Puppies program. I've seen some pictures posted of kids hugging her as they read, and she has a doggy grin. I would do it all again.
Next story.
Some backstory. This began before COVID kicked off and has only recently ended. So my uncle was over at my house for my birthday. Both of us are gun owners. I compete in competitions, and he's just the kind of guy to go to the range once a month. We had gone shooting the previous day and only brought out a few guns because we had some technical stuff to work on with a few guns, so it wasn't really a trip just to shoot. My uncle surprised me on the trip with some tannerite, which is an explosive you set off by shooting it, so we ended up blowing some shit up while out there but saving most of it for the next day. The next day we were packing up to actually go out shooting for real instead of spending the day tinkering, and my uncle asked me to bring one of my guns that has very expensive and hard to find ammo for him to shoot a bit. I told him I only had about 20 rounds for it, and I would like to save them for another day, since I didn't know if I'd be able to find more. Here's where things start falling apart. My uncle is known to be a bit scummy and a hothead, so he snapped and tried guilting me into bringing the gun, telling me I owe him for the tannerite. I told him that I didn't realize I would have to pay him back for a gift, and if that was the case, he could just have the remaining tannerite, then walked back to my room to start putting away my guns, since I could tell this was pretty much gonna ruin the day. This made him lose his absolute shit and start yelling and stomping about me being an ungrateful piece of shit and how he should kick my ass to teach me a lesson. At this point, I tell him to get the fuck out of my house if he's gonna threaten me, and he charges up the stairs at me. My uncle is a very large and fit man, so I grabbed the bear spray out of my shooting bag. The shooting range we use is in the middle of nowhere, and pointed it at him. My uncle has been maced before, so he quickly backed down and left, damaging my door on the way out. I just went about my day after this, packing up most of the guns, but loading a couple into the car, because I planned to still head to the range as not to let him ruin my fun. As I'm packing up the car, a couple police cars roll up and they start shouting at me to get on the ground, and they put me in handcuffs. I pretty quickly found out they were there because my uncle called and said I pointed a weapon at him and mentioned my guns. I ended up having to show the police the footage from my security camera before they let me go. After that day, I fully cut ties with my uncle and just moved on with my life. But I came to find out that he was talking shit about me to family members, which is when I started plotting my revenge. I knew my uncle illegally stored his restricted guns, and I knew he spent quite a bit of money on them. But I also knew the cops probably wouldn't bother since I had no proof. I found out that my uncle had been shooting all the animals in his yard when he lives in the city for my grandma, who he brags and sends pictures to. One of the animals he shot is an endangered species, and I knew my grandma's phone had the picture on it, so I eventually snuck onto my grandma's phone and sent myself all the incriminating pictures, including ones of illegal guns, and reported it anonymously to the police. Today my uncle got arrested. Fish and Game seized his cars and his guns. His wife has pretty much left him, since the police raid traumatized her and their kids, and all of his gun friends have gone off-grid, so he has no support. Court date and charges unknown, but from my research, he's looking at a really long sentence. I feel absolutely no remorse because I've always said I don't think him having access to firearms was safe, since he can be violent, and he's overall a shit person.